Well, he's elected to run the country, head the U.S. government, speak for the American people, yet he gives the impression of a guy alone, someone living remotely, even from his own staff, the very cabinet he appointed. This is the world of Donald Trump. We know him from his tweets rather than his executive leadership. It's as if he's living upstairs at the White House all alone, tweeting from his bedroom while strangers run things downstairs and in the government agencies. Good evening. I'm Chris Matthews in Washington. After months of inaction and equivocation from the president, his top intelligence and national security officials gathered before the cameras yesterday, there they are, to issue a strong and unambiguous message. Russia is targeting the United States, and our very democracy is at stake. Well, it appeared that, for the first time in 19 months, the Trump administration was finally speaking with one voice. Well, actually, it's not. Just 6 hours after that press conference yesterday, President Trump proceeded to undercut their warnings, calling it all a hoax, while boasting of his personal relationship with Vladimir Putin. The dissonance, the distinction, the difference between the president and his administration couldn't have been clearer.
We continue to see a pervasive messaging campaign by Russia to try to weaken and divide the United States.
We had a great meeting with Russia. We had a great meeting with Putin.
This is a threat we need to take extremely seriously.
Let me tell you, if I did go up and start screaming, they would have said he was terrible.
The Russians have to stop doing what they're doing.
If I get along with Vladimir Putin, that's a good thing, folks.
This threat is not going away.
We got along really well.
Our democracy itself is in the crosshairs.
Now we're being hindered by the Russian hoax. It's a hoax, okay?
Well, as NBC News points out, the two events created a split-screen effect. America's intelligence experts warning voters that Russia is trying to undermine democracy, while Trump tells them it's all political chicanery. It again highlighted the president's apparent unwillingness to hold Putin accountable for the cyber warfare that Russia launched in 2016 and continues to wage against our country. And despite all the evidence of Russia's influence campaign to help Trump, the president said that Putin was unhappy he won.
I'll tell you what, Russia's very unhappy that Trump won. That I can tell you.
Well, that's a far cry from what Putin himself said back in Helsinki last month.
President Putin, did you want President Trump to win the election, and did you direct any of your officials to help him do that?
Yes, I did, because he talked about bringing the U.S.-Russia relationship back to normal.
Well, joining me right now is Mika Ouyang, National Security Director at Third Way, Michael Schmidt, a reporter for the New York Times, Jonathan Lemire, a White House reporter with the Associated Press, and Malcolm Nance, an MSNBC analyst and author of The Plot to Destroy Democracy. First to the reporters, Michael, and then John. What do we make of this? I mean, factually, isn't that what's going on, this split screen?
Well, I guess they had no choice. They had to show that they were doing something because it left them exposed to these critics who says, look, you are actually not doing anything. You're not taking this threat seriously. So by putting them out there, they have sort of an official way of saying, look, this is a real thing that is on our radar. The president obviously is still able to go out and say what he wants despite that.
Jonathan, the White House briefing room is to brief the country on what the White House thinks, what the president thinks. Sarah Huckabee Sanders said that very clear to Acosta the other day. I speak here for the president. They arranged this press conference in the White House to speak for the White House, and it said we have a threat from the Russians. We had an attack from the Russians in 2016. We're getting it again. And then the president goes out, who is the president, and says no such thing. It's a hoax.
Yeah, it's a remarkable split, Chris. It's another example of the president versus the presidency, where you saw this show of force in the briefing room yesterday. Finally, people would say overdue show of force to try to warn Americans about Russia's continuing election interference and trying to outline some steps on how to stop that. Then just hours later at a rally in Pennsylvania, I was there, the president made no mention of that whatsoever except to call it a hoax. And then instead spent the majority of his time in that rally delivering a screed against the media, complaints against the press, using fake news as a term not to say this story is not true, but simply use it as a blanket term for coverage he didn't like, and in particular on Russia, how the media covered the Helsinki summit, which, let's remember, the president right then and there was given an opportunity to publicly, with the world watching, denounce what Russia did, to tell them not to do it again, and he didn't do it.
Well, who told those people, like the head of the National Intelligence, Dan Coats, or the CIA director, or the FBI director, Wray, who told them to go into the White House press room, stand there with Sarah Huckabee, the president's spokesperson, and say the opposite of what the president said? Did he tell them to say the opposite, that the Russians really did screw with us in 16 and are doing it again? Did he tell them to do that? Who did if it wasn't the president?
Nothing in the White House happens, of course, without the president giving an okay to it. But what you're seeing here is he takes, and you laid it out well at the beginning of the show here, he charts his own path. He goes it alone. He is going to say what he feels, whether it's on Twitter or at a rally. And in terms of collusion, he can't, the idea of Russian interference, I should say, he can't separate the idea between the Mueller probe and the accusations of collusion and just that Moscow tried to interfere on his behalf. And he thinks that giving credence to that idea, giving credence to the idea that Russia was trying to interfere, delegitimizes his victory and makes him an illegitimate president. And we see time and time again how that revs him up and how he unleashes, and we saw it last night in Pennsylvania.
Let's try one more time with Michael, the New York Times. Did he tell those people to go into the White House press room yesterday and say the Russians did what they did, and then he went out and said they didn't? I mean, this is wacky.
I can't believe.
And why don't people see this as wacky like I do?
I can't believe it was his idea. I find it hard to believe it was his idea. That would not be consistent.
Who's the grown-up that came up with the idea of that briefing yesterday?
Probably John Kelly. I mean, I think time and time again it comes back to Kelly.
Well, I would also...
Just a second, while U.S. officials, intelligence officials announced they're taking steps to combat the threat of Russian interference, the president still appears unwilling to lead that effort, which ultimately hinders our ability to deter Russian aggression. As cybersecurity experts tell the New York Times, to deter Russia, Moscow needs to believe that the United States will impose costs beyond the sanctions already and other punishments it has doled out, and that requires Mr. Trump to make clear he will act against interference. Mika.
So I think that when you ask about who's the grown-up in the room, what we saw yesterday is it's the vice president who's actually still saying this is a threat and we need to do something. He's on a different page than the president. He's on the same page with the intelligence officials. So if there's anyone else who's saying, hey, go into the room, we could see that. But at the same time, we're bleeding expertise out of the FBI on cybersecurity. They're all walking out the door.
Malcolm, put it together. Have you ever seen a CEO who tells one message to be put out officially and then delivers the opposite message within 6 hours on purpose?
Well, yes. And the last person that I saw do that was Saddam Hussein. He would always come out with these insane statements, and then he would wait to see if his little Politburo would back him up and try to get anyone who was in opposition. I think what we saw here with Donald Trump is that he, with Mike Pence, just decided to stage a Potemkin Village event and allow them to cover their butts, so to speak, by coming out and doing what Michael Kelly wanted them to do, which was to make a statement to the nation that they're on top of it. I think he has no intention whatsoever of allowing them to go any further than that press conference and the basic standards that each agency would do as a matter of course. I think, like Michael said, that this gives him a measure of illegitimacy if he recognizes any of this as decent or legitimate.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.